Hi there, I'm Judy DiLorenzo from A Life Well Planted, and today I'm demonstrating how I freeze soup and other liquids using a basic vacuum sealer like this FoodSaver. Right now we have pounds of this beautiful asparagus coming out of the garden, actually about a pound a day. So making soup and then freezing it in flat packages is one of the ways that I put up the harvest. I made my potato leek soup with asparagus recipe that you can find in my cookbook. This is a triple batch. I made a triple batch last week and froze 8 quarts, so this will probably also give me about that amount. So then we'll have 16 quarts in the freezer. Maybe I'll do it a third time. It's so nice when you have leftovers or soup or stew or whatever tucked away in the freezer to pull out on those nights when you really can't or don't feel like cooking. This is not quite the base model for the FoodSaver. It's just a step up. It has a couple of extra features like a trough to put the plastic. It has a moist dry button. We've been doing this for decades, and basically this is the third FoodSaver that I've had to buy, so they last a long time. The model I had before this did not have the moist dry button, and it still worked fine for this purpose. Some people think that you really, can't freeze liquids this way, but you'll see that it is totally doable. Some people think that you have to freeze liquids first in ice cube trays and then vacuum seal the cubes, but I find that process totally unnecessary and also not feasible when you're doing big projects like this. They do sell more expensive, larger units that are meant specifically to freeze liquids. I don't know, who manufactures them. I just noticed that they do make those types of units and you can find them online. But again, they're very expensive, and I don't think that it's necessary because you can do the job with just a basic vacuum sealer, as you'll see in a moment. I did also create another blog post with video for my website called How to Make and Freeze Tomato Puree, so you can check that out. It explains that another way to freeze liquids is by putting them in either pint or pint and a half sized canning jars. You can freeze them that way. Those jars are rated for the freezer. The quart sized jars are not rated for the freezer, so you would want to use either the pint or the pint and a half. If you freeze in the quart sized jars, sometimes as the liquid heaves, it will crack the jar. So that's the problem with that. What I usually do when I freeze liquids is measure, because see, these bags have these scores so that you can measure the length of the bag. So I usually do 3.5 scores, and so having this cutting blade is new for me, so I have to make sure that I'm getting it in the right spot. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that is 3.5 scores. And then you put the bag, I'm doing this from the side so it's a little funny. Anyway, so you put the bag in and you seal one end, and that will make, a bag for you to use. Otherwise, when you first cut it, obviously both ends are just opened. Okay, so here we go. We have a bag. Now, because I like to freeze in quart-sized packages, I use this quart-sized canning jar as my guide. Oops, I need the funnel. Hang on a sec. Okay, so this is a stainless steel funnel that I got from Lee Valley Hardware. I just love it. Anyway, you measure out your liquid, whether it be tomato puree or what have you. And you can measure smaller amounts. The quart size works for us. This gives us two 2-cup servings. Okay, so then you put your bag over the jar. You flip it. Now you have your quart of soup. You put it in your FoodSaver in the trough, and you push out any obvious air bubbles, but this looks pretty good actually. It's a thick soup because I had it in the refrigerator overnight, so it kind of got a little thick, which makes it a little bit easier to freeze. But when I did this last week with the same soup, the soup was just a slight hair warm still from, you know, having just cooked it that night, and so it was much thinner than this, and it still worked fine. Okay, so that's it. So you start it. I have it on the moist setting because I happen to have that option, but again, if your FoodSaver doesn't have that button, it doesn't matter, it'll still work. You hit vacuum seal. When it's done, the lights will go off, so you know that it's okay to open it. There we go. And voila, we have a quart of soup in a package that you can stack flat, which is, you know, so important if you're putting up a lot of items in your freezer, or if you just have a basic refrigerator freezer and you don't have, you know, the big deep freezers like I do. The real estate, if you will, the space in your freezer becomes very important. And because we do a lot of projects, even though I have two, you know, full-size deep freezers in the basement, I have to be careful that I use the space wisely. If I freeze everything in jars, it makes it harder to, you know, to fit the amount of food I need to fit in the freezer each year. Don't forget to label the date and the name of the product. My trough, because this is like where the overflow would go if liquid did come out of the package, if it got pulled out, as you can see, it's completely dry. If you have a base model that doesn't have that button, sometimes a little bit of liquid will seep out, but really not that much, so it's fully doable. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If so, please leave a comment or smash that like button, and I'll see you the next time. Be well.